You get home from a party. You weren't lifting anything. You weren't running anywhere. You just talked to people for 3 hours. And yet you collapse onto the couch like you ran a marathon. Why does talking feel like labor? Here's the strange part. The real answer has nothing to do with introversion or extroversion. It's older than personality. It's older than language itself. Think about the last time you sat in a crowded meeting, or a family dinner, or a long flight next to a stranger who wouldn't stop talking. Your body was still. Your muscles barely moved. But by the end, you felt wrung out like something had been taken from you. Something had. Your brain was working a second job the entire time, when you never agreed to and never clocked into. It was running a constant background calculation. Who is this person? What do they want? Are they a threat? Are they an ally? What does that face mean? Why did their tone shift? Should I respond now or wait? None of this reached your conscious attention, but your brain billed you for it anyway. This isn't a flaw in your wiring. It's the oldest job your brain ever had. For most of human history, there was no real boundary between being social and being safe. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent decades studying primate groups and human communities, and he found something that reshaped how we think about socializing entirely. He proposed that the size of a primate's social group correlates directly with the size of its neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought. Bigger groups demand more brain power, not because bigger groups need more muscle, because bigger groups need more tracking. You can't just remember a name. You have to remember who owes who a favor, who fought last week, who's allied with who might betray the group if food runs low. This is called social cognition, and it's expensive. Dunbar's research suggests that maintaining stable relationships with around 150 people is close to the upper limit of what a human brain can comfortably track. Go past that, and the system starts to strain. Notice that number, 150. That's roughly the size of a small hunter-gatherer band's wider network. It's not a coincidence. Your brain was built for exactly that scale, no larger. So what happens when you walk into a crowded subway car, a packed lecture hall, an open-plan office with 40 desks? Your ancient tracking system doesn't know it's allowed to switch off. It still tries to monitor every face, every voice, every shift in posture, because for nearly all of human existence, failing to track the room could get you killed. Here's where it gets stranger. This constant tracking isn't passive. It's not like background noise you can tune out. It's active surveillance, and your brain treats threats to your social standing with almost the same urgency as threats to your physical body. Psychologist Naomi Eisenberger ran a series of studies using brain imaging to see what happens during social rejection. She had participants play a virtual ball-tossing game, then secretly excluded them. The other players just stopped passing them the ball. The brain scans showed something remarkable. The same region that lights up during physical pain, the anterior cingulate cortex, lit up during social exclusion too. Being left out wasn't just unpleasant. To your brain, it registered as injury. Think about what that means for your nervous system. A bad joke that lands wrong. A friend who seems distracted. A coworker who doesn't laugh at what you said. Your body doesn't file these as minor social friction. It files them as small wounds. And your brain spends real energy trying to prevent them before they happen. That's the second job. While you're having a conversation, part of your mind is running risk assessment. Will this comment land badly? Did I talk too much? Did they seem annoyed? Should I have said that differently? This isn't anxiety in the clinical sense. It's baseline human wiring, present even in the most confident, socially skilled people you know. It's just usually invisible because it happens beneath conscious thought. Why would evolution build something this exhausting? Because for most of the last few 100,000 years, the answer was simple. Alone meant dead. A human without a group had no one to watch for predators while sleeping. No one to share food during a bad hunt. No one to help raise children who take over a decade to become self-sufficient, longer than almost any other species on Earth. Your ancestors who tracked social dynamics carefully, who noticed tension before it exploded, who repaired relationships quickly, survived. The ones who didn't often didn't. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer HRDY has argued that humans are unusual among primates because we evolved as cooperative breeders. Mothers didn't raise children alone. Aunts, grandmothers, friends, and unrelated group members all pitched in. This made human childhood survival possible, but it also meant your ancestors needed an enormous amount of social bookkeeping. Who helped last time? Who can be trusted with a child? Who is reliable in a crisis? Every one of those questions ran constantly, in real time, for your entire life. This is the part that should make you pause. Your brain's social tracking system never got a memo that the rules changed. It still runs the ancient program. Except now it's running that program in elevators, in video calls, in group chats, on social media feeds with hundreds of strangers' faces and opinions streaming past every day. Researcher and primatologist Robin Dunbar also noted something else worth sitting with. Human conversation, even casual gossip, often serves the same evolutionary function that grooming serves in other primates. Chimpanzees pick parasites out of each other's fur for hours, not just for hygiene, but to build and maintain trust. Humans do something similar with words. Small talk, checking in, catching up, it isn't filler. It's social maintenance. It's the verbal version of grooming, and it requires real cognitive labor every time you do it. So when you leave a long social gathering and feel hollowed out, you haven't been doing nothing. You've been doing one of the oldest, most metabolically demanding jobs your species ever had. Constant threat assessment, constant relationship tracking, constant repair work on a social fabric that, for most of human history, was the only thing standing between you and starvation, exile, or death. Consider what your brain is actually burning through during a normal conversation. Your brain consumes a disproportionate share of your body's total energy, something like 20% of your resting metabolic rate, despite being a small fraction of your total body weight. Most of that energy doesn't go toward solving math problems or remembering a grocery list. It goes toward exactly the kind of fast, automatic social processing you never notice happening. Reading a flicker of irritation on someone's face in a fraction of a second. Adjusting your tone half a beat after someone else's voice shifts. None of this feels like effort while it's happening. All of it costs something afterward. And the cost compounds across a day. Psychologist Roy Baumeister built an entire research program around what he called ego depletion, the idea that acts of self-control draw from a shared, limited resource that drains as the day goes on. Holding back an opinion at dinner, swallowing irritation at a colleague's comment, smiling politely through a conversation you'd rather not be having. Each of these acts, small as it seems on its own, pulls from the same well. By evening, the well runs low. You snap at someone you love over something trivial, not because the trivial thing mattered, but because the well had already been emptied hours earlier, one polite nod at a time. It's worth knowing that some of the specific findings in this area have been debated and revisited as psychology has worked to replicate older studies. That ongoing scientific debate is itself a small demonstration of the same pattern. Reaching consensus, weighing trust, managing disagreement among researchers, all of it runs on the identical social machinery this script has been describing. There's no stepping outside the tracking, not even to study it. Now stretch the lens out even further, past any single evening, to the structure of an entire human life. Evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers proposed something in the early 1970s that quietly reshaped how scientists understood cooperation between unrelated humans. He called it reciprocal altruism, the idea that humans evolved to help non-relatives because the favor would likely be returned later. This sounds simple, almost obvious, until you consider what it requires of the brain. To make reciprocal altruism work, you can't just remember who helped you. You have to remember how much they helped, when, under what circumstances, whether they've ever failed to reciprocate before, and whether the social cost of refusing them now would outweigh the benefit of keeping the relationship intact. That's not one calculation. That's a constantly updating ledger, running for every relationship you've ever had, cross-referenced in real time every time you interact with any of those people again. Trivers argued this kind of tracking was so cognitively demanding that it may have driven the evolution of larger brains all on its own, a kind of evolutionary arms race, where the best social accountants outcompeted everyone else, generation after generation, until tracking favors and slights became as automatic as breathing, and just as invisible. This is why a conversation with an old friend, someone whose ledger you've maintained for 20 years, feels easy, even restful, while a conversation with a new acquaintance, whose ledger you're building from nothing, feels strangely taxing even when the topic is light. You're not imagining the difference. You're running two entirely different cognitive processes that happen to look identical from the outside. Here's the modern twist, the part that makes this feel less like an old story and more like something happening to you right now. Your ancient tracking system was built for a world of maybe 50 to 150 familiar faces, people whose histories you knew, whose intentions you could read with reasonable accuracy. Today, you might interact, even briefly, even just by scrolling, with hundreds of faces a day. Coworkers in 3 time zones, customers you'll never meet twice, strangers online whose tone you have to guess at through a screen, stripped of the facial cues your brain evolved to depend on. Your tracking system doesn't know the difference between a close friend and a stranger's comment section. It still tries to run the calculation. Who is this? What do they want? Am I safe? Did I respond correctly? Multiply that by hundreds of interactions a day, and you get a kind of exhaustion that has no obvious cause because nothing physically happened. You just sat there. You just talked. You just scrolled. This is why an introvert and an extrovert can both feel this drain, just at different thresholds. It's not about liking people or disliking people. It's about how much tracking your nervous system has to run before it hits its evolutionary ceiling, the one Dunbar mapped out decades ago. The one your ancestors never had to push past because their world simply didn't offer that many faces to track. There's a strange kind of relief in knowing this. The tiredness isn't weakness. It isn't a personal failure to enjoy people enough or to have the right kind of social stamina. It's a 500,000-year-old survival system, doing exactly what it was built to do, in a world that handed it far more data than it was ever designed to process. So tonight, when you finally sit down after a long day of people, faces, conversations, and unspoken calculations, and your body feels strangely heavy even though you never lifted a thing, remember what actually happened. You weren't doing nothing. You were running the oldest job your species ever had. And your ancestors, the ones who survived long enough to become your ancestors at all, would recognize that tiredness instantly. They'd just call it Tuesday.